Let me bring Aryama Sundaram, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, now on this broadcast. Mr. Sundaram, really appreciate your time. We are looking at political arguments from both the sides, the BJP and the Congress. They're talking about, whether there is vendetta or the real case taking its shape. Talking about the merits of the case, and I want you to speak about this as a lawyer. How do you look at the timeline of this case and now that the charge sheet has been filed?
Well, the fact of the matter is this whole thing originated more than 10 years ago and has been festering since then. The delayed filing of all these cases is perhaps what is being jumped on by the Congress party to say that it is a political vendetta. The fact that there is politics behind it, nobody can doubt. The fact that it is done to embarrass the Congress party and its leadership, one cannot doubt. However, the question is as to whether there is fire in the smoke that we are seeing. And looking at what the whole scenario is, let me say that it is quite a strange transactions which have taken place. It's a strange chain of events by which things have been done. It appears that there was an entire modus operandum by which assets were being taken over, and the members of the Gandhi family took over assets, and the Congress party has written off the debts of 80 lakhs. But the question then arises, who has been cheated in the bargain? The Congress party is not complaining because they willingly wrote off their debts. AJL itself is not complaining of having given the shares, and the company which is controlled by the Gandhi family having taken over the thing. So who has been cheated in this whole bargain? Now, if there has been no cheating and it's been a completely agreed understanding amongst all three elements, then the predicated offense which is necessary for a PMLA case, that is the underlying offense of cheating, breach of trust, etc., would not arise. There is no member of the Congress party who has objected. There is no member of AGL who has objected. There is no, and the person who has taken the shares are saying, look, it's a fairly straightforward transaction. Maybe in the bargain, lot of the assets changed hands. However, again, the claim is that where is the profit? Because it's a non-profit company. We're not getting dividends, anything. It's just to keep control over all this and see what can be done.
So, the view which has been shared also is that the Gandhis haven't really got much relief from the Supreme Court or from the High Court, because, of course, from the High Court and then the Supreme Court, they had filed a plea quashing the case. They got no relief. So, prima facie, there is some evidence to suggest that there is need for investigation. So, if the case is being pursued by the investigating agencies, then how are they really in the wrong?
Like I told you, the entire transaction leaves much to be desired. The entire transaction smacks of a predetermined manner of transferring such assets. The entire transaction, the modus operandum adopted, is very strange indeed. So it's quite natural that they weren't quashed at that stage. An investigation was called for. But the question then is, has this investigation shown that someone has been cheated, that someone had trust has been breached? Has the investigation shown it at this stage? And that is what has to be gone into and taking cognizance. Having said that, let me say one thing. The fact of the matter is, the people who can complain are AGL shareholders, who can say this entire transaction has really deprived them of their holding over these assets, because their shareholding percentage has been completely diluted, with 99% of the shareholding going elsewhere. And there are still more than 1,000 of those shareholders who were there when this whole case started. And were those shares diluted legally? Were they aware of it? Because I understand that 2 or 3 of the persons who held shares originally are saying that they had no idea that their shares had been watered down or had been taken away. Now, certainly, if those people have in any manner been cheated, then a case of cheating and breach of trust does arise. So I think that is where this whole case is going to boil down to.
My last question to you would be that do investigating agencies actually feel the pressure if there are protests of this nature? The Congress party workers held protests against the Enforcement Directorate throughout the country. Do you see this impacting the nature of investigation?
Well, looking at what has been happening over the past few years, probably a decade, 2 decades, I think that the only pressure ever felt by these investigative agencies, and I'm not referring to any one party in power, we have found this for over 20, 25 years when other parties were in power, is that the only pressure these investigative agencies appear to feel is from the ruling party, which is in power. In fact, that is why you remember, even when the present opposition party was in power, there was an expression used, caged parrot, to describe the CBI. So, but I don't think the opposition protests creates any kind of pressure on these investigative agencies. I don't believe they do.
All right, Aryama Sundaram, pleasure having you on this edition of The Last Word. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. That's all from me. I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching.